Welcome to. This is what I want, but why? Oh, okay. Welcome to the Tree Planners podcast. For some reason, our what I don't know. I think it was for everybody. Our the countdown timer did not work. Anybody else
hmm
notice that?
It was the
What the heck?
longest minute ever. You
Yeah.
didn't move at all.
All right. Well, welcome to the Tree Planners podcast. Anyways, even with our broken countdown timer. Um, But we did have a nice fade to our intro song that time instead of the sharp cutoff that we had last time. So we're getting better, baby steps. Um, as usual, it's me, Adam, and Margaret over there, and we're joined by Virginia today. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to throw it to Margaret to give a little bit of an outline of what we're thinking we're going to discuss today.
Well, as you know, with the localizer segment of the podcast, we're talking about people in Simcoe County who are interacting and stewarding with land in different ways, and who are connecting with the heart of what we're trying to protect and you know make better and bigger and leave a legacy. And so I met Virginia, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I just finished listening to a podcast that day about audacity. And Virginia told me her story of how she came to create Vicky Tree Yoga and Wellness. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with her business, I'll let you do your little intro in a second, but it's right within the heart of the Moraine, and a large chunk of property that she stewards, on behalf of everybody. And so I thought it would be really interesting to have Virginia on today to talk about how stewarding can look different in different ways. And she's also has a background in ultra marathon running. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So that's a whole mindset that I don't get, because me running to the mailbox is like torture. So imagining going for multiple hours or days even is well outside. So anyways, Virginia, I'll throw it to you. If you could just tell us a little bit about how you came. Let's start with the story, which I love, about how you came to get the piece of property that you're on now.
Well, we were always looking for property to open up a wellness center or a place where we could turn the land into a feeling, which is not hard to do. All you have to do is occupy the land, and the feeling is already there. So my sister had passed very quite suddenly, and I turned to Copeland Forest, which is a large portion of land in the Oromodonte. It's actually beautiful, and it has kilometers and kilometers of trails. So I began to run Copeland Forest often and every day, for hours and hours at a time, to find a little bit of peace and calm, like we all try to do when the carpet's ripped out from underneath you and unwanted change seems to rear its ugly head. And during this process, I created a map of Copeland Forest, because at the time there was no maps, and trails, forks, and those things weren't as prevalent as they are today. And it gave me a little bit of peace. And during this process, I was running through someone else's land. And because Copeland Forest is so big, there's a chunk of 43 acres within Copeland Forest that had trails through it. And I was running through it all the time. And when I created this map, there was that chunk of land that I put on the map unknowingly. So when I had someone proofread my map, someone else who loves to be in the forest and ran those trails quite a bit, they pointed that out to me. It was the first time in 3 years of running Copeland Forest that I even knew that was someone else's land. So I was devastated by that. I just think, land is so precious, and we should really be very mindful of occupying someone else's space. And so I made a point to call them. And they just happened to live on 6th Line down the road. And we had a beautiful conversation, and I asked why, he didn't have no trespassing signs up, and people, I guess, had been ripping them down. And we had this lovely conversation, and I told him about my map and how I'd be donating all the proceeds to the map, including like every last penny I received, to Copeland Forest Friends. And as a joke at the end of our conversation, I said to him, well, could you put me on your list if you ever sell your land? Like, who would ever sell this piece of land? It's just so magical. And because he heard my story and because he knew that I loved land and I wasn't looking at land as a money piece or something that it could give to do for me, he said, only a couple people or a few people are on this list, and I'm going to put you on this list. And so, sure enough, about 6 months later, I got the call that the land was going up. Now, if the land had went up, on MLS or whatever, we wouldn't have been able to afford that land. I mean, it's prime piece, and I'm sure a developer would have scooped that up at a price we could never afford it. We're lucky enough that the people that were selling the land, really value land and wanted to make sure it went to somebody else who also valued land and didn't see it just as a money piece. And so we were very fortunate after a bidding war with a couple other people that were just, the same as us, loved land. We were fortunate enough to get this land. And so I always say it's full circle. And with the death of my sister, full circle all the way around. Here we sit today on this beautiful 43-acre piece of land, and a piece of land that my sister's name is tagged on it with the name of my studio. And so I'm very, very careful how I use the studio and the wellness center. It all has to be surrounded with sharing, feeling the forest. And a lot of people that enter our studio before they even arrive and open up the door, because the building piece of this, my studio and wellness center, is not the beauty. The beauty is the trees and the 1 kilometer driveway. So quite often when people, even before they even open the door, they comment about the driveway and how the trees already let them let go. And so, here we were building this studio, and people would be like, why are you building a kilometer long driveway? Like, do you know what's going to happen with the snow and the potholes? And I was like, I can't have a piece of land and not utilize its full potential. And to me, that meant having a kilometer long driveway so we could get right down into the heart where the trees are so big and it's almost untouched. It's untouched land. It's just beautiful. And it paid off because when you come to my space, it has nothing to do with the building or the stairway or all the other features of our space that is quite elegant. Um, Everybody comments on the forest and the trees and the feeling of being within nature, in an untouched piece of land.
Mm-hmm. You hadn't heard that story, Adam?
No, I hadn't. It's interesting how I don't know if I'm stepping into a bit of a hornet's nest with this, but it's just interesting how a lot of the places that we look to for to reconnect to ourselves in a very sort of authentic and real way tend to be places that also escape the environments that we create for ourselves otherwise, right? Like the urban environments and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it just, so you also sort of contrasted your hopes for that space against what a developer might do with that space. And it's just interesting to me how a lot of, like the majority of us, live in spaces that aren't conducive to feeling a connection with a greater being, I guess, to get a little bit cheap about it, but we are interconnected. I mean, that's what makes us living beings, but the spaces that we create for ourselves, and maybe this is going off on some ridiculous tangent, but the spaces that we create ourselves for ourselves, for the most part, are almost antithetical to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and once people get into nature and feel the nature, um, they don't go back. They don't go back words is what I mean. So the more we can expose people, and I don't mean ultra runners. Like I always appreciated the forest. I run in the forest and I bike in the forest, and we only moved up to Oromodonti because of the Copeland Trail. So there's 54 kilometers of single track and about 30 kilometers of double track, and it's public lands. But a lot of people even in the area didn't even know about all these trails. And I would be taking out all these friends I would meet into the Copeland Forest and showing them the beauty of it. And it really struck me. The more we show people how beautiful the forest is, the more they think it's their own. And I'm going to tell you an example that is pretty cool. So we had that ice storm. Okay. So a lot of people go into Copeland Forest. There's no real big organizations. There is the Copeland Forest Friends. But for the most part, you have tons of different groups, people coming up from Toronto, people with local in the area, people from Collingwood, whether they're hiking, horseback riding, biking, walking, whatever they're doing, that Copeland Forest is a magical place for everybody. Everyone feels like they own that place because they actually go in there and they feel in that space. So we have the elite athlete to Joe Blow that gets off their coach once a year. Okay, that's how magical the forest is. It can accommodate all different people because of the double track as well. We had the ice storm, and the ice storm hit our area, as you know, very, very hard. I mean, my driveway took me 8 hours just to cut the trees to get out so we could get water. So the Copeland Forest was destroyed. I mean, every single track you can imagine. I went out the next day and I couldn't even find the single tracks, and I can run the forest with my eyes closed. And I know all the trails just by the leaf. But and you know, I came home and we were just devastated. And me and my husband sat there, and I said, you know, he's like, we're not going to be able to get on those trails for like months. And I said, no, we'll be on those trails in 2 or 3 weeks. You wait and see. It took about 3 weeks, not even. There, 54 kilometers single track is all cleared. And nobody organized it. It was a bunch of groups just doing it. Nobody, there's no fanfare. Look what I did. Copeland Forest took care of all the trails because everybody owns it. And I, to this day, don't know who did what trail, but I do know hundreds of people that were in there with chainsaws and moving all the trees so people could access it again. And you know, of course, we want to keep our forest as is. So what you go in, you leave nothing, um, and you leave it exactly as it is. However, the more people we can get to utilize the forest respectfully, like Copeland Forest, you have these trails and you have people going on them, the more no one's going to be allowed to touch or develop them because everyone owns them. Then you have other trails that are more organized right down the road, and they're still trying to get all their trails cleared. Same thing in Barrie, trying to get their trails cleared. And here you have 54 kilometers. I don't know if you guys appreciate how long that is. And it's clear within 2 or 3 weeks. And people are asking me, oh, I can't wait to go to Copeland again, Virginia. When's it going to be cleared? I was like, it was cleared a month ago. I don't know what you guys are talking about. It's all clear. And I think that in itself speaks to the volume or the importance of us continuing to make land accessible to people. Because when people are in land and they feel like it's theirs, they will protect it with everything they have. And so the property that we have, the 43 acres, I educate, and my goal with my property as well is to show people the Copeland Forest, to educate them about that this is all done through volunteer work and through people would just hike with saws in their hands. They just hiked and they moved just stayed on the trail and moved everything. And you know, to protect our land, we also have to show people how to use it and give people access and permission to use it. Now, Copeland Forest is very unique that a report just came out. And in that report, they said that dogs could be off leash. So it is such a beautiful place. I just ran this morning for, I don't know, 3 hours this morning in there. And I passed by 4 different people. And I go at 6 a.m. in the morning trying not to hit anybody. And I passed like probably 4 different people and 4 different dogs. And every person, it's just a wave in the woods. Yours good, mine's good, great. We bark a little bit and chat and we just move on. And it's not your dog did this or, oh, my dog doesn't like this. It's an understanding that if you plan to go into the Copeland Forest with your dogs, or if you plan to go in with your children or your horses, then you go in respectfully. It's not yours, it's everybody's. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, it's such a beautiful place. And if we could just get more people into the woods, I feel like the woods would be even more protected. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
passionate about that. I'm so passionate about that.
No, for sure. It reminded me of a book, Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. And she's a professor, an Indigenous professor. And she starts off her class with asking people to describe how humans and nature interact. Like, give me a list of how humans and nature interact. And 9 times out of 10, everybody's like, we destroy, we pollute, we this, we that, and it just goes off in a negative tangent.
Mhm.
And she said the hard part is colonialism has taught us that humans don't have a role in nature, that the only role we possibly have is something that's destructive and extractive.
Mhm.
And that she was like, the indigenous way of being was actually that we had a positive role in nature. by harvesting things, by, cutting back trees
Mhm.
that were over, like these sort of things you're talking about,
Mhm.
actually gives humans a role in that community versus
Yes.
just destroying it. And so
Mhm.
I always think that's really interesting when I hear what you're describing. And I've had similar situations with our same with the ice storm in our little community here. Like everyone just kind of pulled together
Mhm.
because we recognize the trails around us. It's not a community of humans, it's a larger community that you're part of. You're walking into a community of birds, of trees, of
Mhm.
shrubs, and animals that you don't even know or see. And
Yeah.
so I think that the story you just described was kind of what Robin Wall Kimmerer was talking about, is there is a way to have humans interact with nature that
Mhm.
isn't like freezing it in amber, that you can't touch it. And I think that's where sometimes modern environmentalists get into, is like the only way to be an environmentalist is to not touch it. Don't do anything to it, positive or obviously negative, but don't even try to experience it, because as soon as you do, you damage it, and we can't. Um,
Mhm.
there's no possible way to have a positive influence, and I really reject that. It doesn't mean that I think we should be developing all the forests everywhere. It's not a binary, but there
Right.
is a spot that I don't think people have really thought about, is what would it look like if human communities actually felt that they had a positive role in their
Mhm.
natural communities around them, versus feeling like we just have to stop it from being impacted by humans.
Mhm. Yeah. I agree with you. I love that. Yeah.
Well, you might want to read her book if you haven't already, because
Mhm.
it's pretty good.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow.
What are you thinking, Adam?
I well, I don't entirely agree with that. Um,
Welcome to the podcast.
the yeah, well, I mean, there's plenty. I have not read the book though, so I'm also reluctant to critique it. But I do think that there's a danger in sort of essentializing nature as well as human society or human culture, regardless of whether or not that may be where that culture might be located. Point being that it's also true that there are plenty of indigenous cultures where ecological overshoot occurred, and so that sort of essentializing or romanticizing of certain cultures I can sort of obscure some important lessons that can be learned from the relationships that they had with the land around them. That being said, I think that colonial mindset, that's a really kind of key point, which is that, things can be controlled, and, certain things that are profitable to a select group can be extracted through that control.
Hmm.
So that kind of relationship to the other, whether that other is other people or to nature, is certainly problematic. One of the things I see in that relationship, though, is that the lessons that can be learned in a smaller setting, where those lessons are more immediate, where sort of a food source could collapse, and consequences be very real for the people that depend on that, is quite different from a global setting like we have, in where there's a certain degree of elasticity in the cause and effect. But nevertheless, that we know, data tells us that we are sort of overshooting the resources, the carrying capacity of the planet, but the the consequences of that aren't going to be felt equally, and they're not going to be felt necessarily immediately, or at least for us, anyways, immediately. So, it's always difficult to heed and learn from lessons that are sort of data oriented, as opposed to sort of felt physically,
Hmm.
which gets the segue back into that sort of experience of nature. and how important that is to be able to experience it and have that physical connection to it rather than kind of, I love David Attenborough, and it's amazing the cinematography that he gets, and you're able to watch that on a screen. But that's different from being in a place and having that sensory environment around you. And I think far too few people get to experience that. And it's interesting also. So here's the thing, actually, with your running, with your trail running.
Mhm.
Trail running is very different from running on sidewalks or on roads, right? It does totally different things to your body. Uh, you have countless variables that you incorporate into your body as you're running, routes that you have to step over or jump over, whatever, as you're running. Your cadence is constantly being varied based upon what's on the ground and all sorts of things like that. So that experience is very different from doing a 10K or a marathon or whatever on a street, and the impact that that has on the body. I don't I haven't gotten so far in my thinking as to sort of arrive at a conclusion as to exactly what the result is in the body. But I mean, I think it's an interesting analogy. Also, just going back to that first point about the difference in the types of places that we create and inhabit, and how so much of our built environment is based on kind of straight lines, hard edges,
Yeah.
things like that.
Well, the just coming back to your point about or trail running versus road running. So I've done both. I was actually in the Boston Marathon the year the bombs went off, and it was after that I had already crossed the finish line 7 minutes later. The bombs went off, but from that day forward, I turned to trail running. But I always say trail running, and I've done some half marathons and marathons since Boston, but it's not my cup of tea at all. And I'll tell you why. Two reasons. One is there's just nothing like the forest. The forest is a feeling. And so it's not concrete and it's not, like you said, hard on your body. So you're repeating the same pattern when you're doing a road over and over again. You're usually on a slant on one side.
Mhm.
And your body mechanics are just the same over and over again. Whereas with trail running, you're climbing, you're walking, you're hiking, your body's constantly moving, your mind is alert, you're breathing in all the fresh air and obviously everything that the trees are emitting. You're breathing that all in as well. So we have something that us trail runners always say, and I always tell my friends who are road runners and start running with me in the woods, I always warn them. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to ruin you. And when they go, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm going to ruin you for the road. So if you're okay with that, I just need you to understand once you start trail running, it's going to be very, very hard to go back to the road. Now, do I still road run? Absolutely. I road run in the winter. If I in the summer, you'll never see me on the road. It wouldn't make sense to me. But for where I'm located, but once you trail run, it's very rare that you see people go back. So you get a lot of marathoners transitioning at a later stage in their life, usually 40 or 50, into ultra running. So usually ultra running starts for people around 40 or 50. That's when you start getting into ultra running because A, you have a little more time, usually in your life, your kids are grown or your job or however it is, you have more flexibility. You're a little wiser to know to stay off the roads. Um, but I always say to people, once you trail run, it's over for the road. You're gonna do the road still, but it's not going to be as pleasant because you know what it could be. And so I think, you know, is it only about the hardness on the body for the road running? If it was, and it's way more convenient to road run, but yet people will still travel everywhere they possibly can to try to get into these trail running races. And I guess, again, that speaks to one thing. The forest is a living being. You can't even explain it, as you guys already know. It's therapy. The trees don't judge. You're just exposed to so many things. You don't even understand what is happening when you're in the woods and you finish your run. And I don't get that same thing on the road. And the second thing is the people. You have two different types of people. I have my road running friends and I have my trail running friends. And they're two separate identities, if I'm generalizing here. Trail runners are there to live and experience and breathe. We don't really talk numbers and how fast you went. We mostly talk time and what forest are you running in. Whereas road runners is like, okay, so how far did you go today? Did you go 10K or 8K or 11K? What was your pace? And that's never discussed. So I just ran this morning and I'll walk in and meet my other friend. And did you go for a run this morning? Yeah. Oh, how long did you go? Oh, around 2 or 3 hours. Oh, cool. End of story. Like it is an experience. Whereas road running sometimes is a performance, it's a destination, it's a goal you're trying to achieve on a time. It's a lot of numbers, a number game. And as you get more wise in your age, I found for myself, I realized that I'm looking for more of an experience and fill up than I am for a number to say that I ran my marathon at X distance.
Hmm.
So I know that I didn't answer any of your questions. You weren't asking a question, but you did bring up a very good point about trail running versus road running. And the personalities are totally different. At a trail run, you're using the washroom, you're chatting, the thing goes off, and everyone's like, "Oh, you ready? You got your stuff, you got yours going, I got mine going, off you go." A a a road race, I just stand in the line and I watch these people warming up, and wow, they're all just so focused on themselves and takes off. And I've done both, and I've been that other person, and now I understand a little bit more on what I need to live a fulfilled life, and it's trail running.
Hmm.
Hmm. I think there's a good analogy in there, Virginia. I'm a non-runner. I'm a reluctant runner. I started for all the people that are on there going, I hate running. I am with you. I hated it for a very, very long time. I'm not committed runner, but
Mhm.
I used to run around the block. It's about 3K. And I was like, I'm just going to be a really decent 3K runner, not for a pace, not for anything. Just I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to listen to the birds. I'm going to, you know what I mean? Because we're in a kind of a more treed subdivision. But I think what's interesting about what you're saying, it's not so much about running for me, is what I'm translating it to, is that there is a difference between that goal oriented way of life where you're like, okay, what's next and what's this and da 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 da. And then there is the experience. And I think nature, whether it be a forest or water or, you know, top of a mountain or whatever, leads us into the being part, right? It
Yeah.
leads us to the experience part of humanness, of nature, of connection. And then to Adam's point earlier, the environments we build for humans,
Mhm.
concrete, you know, not much beauty. I'm generalizing here, but I'm talking about the typical
Mhm.
subdivision in Ontario, right? There's other places in the world that do it better, but if you look at how we build communities,
Yeah.
they're not really beautiful. They're not very
And
green. They're
well,
hard. Sorry.
even the parks, it's such a disservice. I drive by and I'm like, that's the park. Do you know what I mean? It's like by putting a swing and
Yeah.
putting a slide and putting a picnic table, that's the park. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not.
Yeah. It's almost an afterthought.
It's a little
Well,
postage stamp. But what we found in COVID, what the data showed was
mhm,
that one, something that a lot of people in planning and our kind of world already know, the access to green space
mhm,
is pretty much dependent on your socioeconomic status. Or
right,
if you're poor,
mhm,
you're probably not going to have much green space around you. If you're
mhm,
rich, you're probably going to have more green space around you. That's just like
mhm,
your luck. That's just
mhm,
how it's been designed so far. And that also that being in nature helps reduce stress. It helps bring down heart rate. This is why the
mhm,
Japanese do the forest bathing. That's become more of a thing. And we know that experience around water also does the same sort of thing. So there is something physiological in us that appreciates being in nature. And yet, whenever we're building habitat for humans, it's like, how
mhm,
much nature can we remove from this place?
mhm.
Like even street trees are something that you have to fight for in locally.
I think that that building for humans though is absolutely wrong because that's not what we're doing, right? We're building for profit, like,
Yes,
and
true,
that
true.
and that's the catch. Also because economies of scale and things like that, and that's where you need sort of the standardized things that you plop down and everything is kind of the same.
But
Um,
this, and I know I'm interrupting you, but I
now
wanted
go for it.
not
Interrupt
to,
away.
I
I
find
want
this
to.
very, very important, is this is what I was arguing to my township just recently, okay, is that here we are in Ormondante, and it's booming. Okay, Ormondante is booming, as you know. Barrie's booming. Like everything's just booming. And here is me and my husband with 43 acres trying to preserve it so that it can be affordable for everybody to come and to enjoy, and letting them know about the Copeland Forest. My yoga rates are $20 like an hour. Like studios in town with four walls have way higher prices than me, and I've kept my rates low. So here you have a couple willing to contribute their finances to ensuring that other people get opportunity to be in nature, to come around nature. Um, and I'm arguing as hard as I can. And my husband's a lawyer, and I have 3 degrees, and we're arguing as hard as we can, saying, we're not asking you guys for money. We're asking you guys to help us make this sustainable so it isn't just a home occupation. And so it just blows my mind. I don't know how many times I've said over and over again, do you guys realize most communities would die to have somebody that comes in and puts their money into making that community exactly as it still is, with the trees and the forest? And I said, and because there's no profit for me, like I'm not a subdivider coming in, and a developer coming in and taking this land and building all these, it really makes me start to think, wow, what is wrong? What is wrong with our growth? What is wrong with our plans? Because right now it seems like it's house after house after house after house after house, and then a school. That's the way it always goes.
Maybe.
And you have all these community members that want to contribute. You don't know how many people have called me and said, are you building that plaza? Or are you building this? Because we have this really cool coffee or community shop, or I'm a bird watcher. I would love to do. There's just so many things, and there's no space for it. There is the only commercially zoned property in all of Ormondante. We happen to own it. Another piece of property up, and we haven't done anything with it. And we're just leaving it because I'm like, I don't even know what we want to do with that now, because it scares me on what's happening, the growth that's happening in our community. And I am arguing endlessly to the town, constantly saying, do you guys know what you have in front of you? You have two people that will want to follow all the rules. You guys tell me how to do it, and I will do it correctly and properly. And my, my, my mission is always about the forest, and my mission is always about protecting it. And I built exactly what I said I was going to build, and I didn't build any more. And I have 43 acres, and I'm not trying to subdivide or bring in a developer or try to change the zoning so I can build all these houses at the front of my property. And so nothing. So I
Sorry,
mean, I have.
what's the objective? What was the goal of?
So right when you have a home occupation, you can only have one other employee, okay?
Okay.
And so there's certain things you always have to be on property. And so there's certain things as a business owner, it exhausts me to have to be operating myself, working. I work about, I don't know, 7 days a week, 12 hours a week. Um, and and a lot of it to me is giving back. Anything I make with Vicky Tree goes right back into it every single time. So I don't take any money from Vicky Tree. So I want to be able to move it out of the home occupation umbrella and move it into a place where I can operate as a wellness studio, and I can have other employees, and I don't have to
Okay.
always own property. It's just so simple. It's not even complicated. It's 32 people. 32 people is my max. I'm not even asking to have a wedding of 100 or all that stuff that wedding people call me all the time, and they offer me, you have no huge amounts of money to have weddings, and we don't do it. We're not allowed to, and I always said I don't want to. I've decided against that. That's a moneymaker, but it's not something that I want in this forest. But if you want to get married with 5 of you on my forest plank, or if you want to have 10 people, or 3 people, and you want the trees present in the ceremony, then I will entertain that.
Hmm.
So it's anyway, I'm going off track here, but my point is, what it really made me realize was, wow, you know, me and Ray are pretty persistent. As you said, I'm pretty audacious. I go for things. I ask, I say the hard questions. We push back. Like, we have hired other lawyers, and you have no idea. And I think to myself, I'm not making any money. Like, I'm doing this because, and yet this is so much pushback. So now I see why nothing else is in Ormondante. There's houses, but there's nothing else. There's Glen Oro, which is absolutely amazing and stunning, and there's a few home businesses, but we're all really the support I don't think is there. And I'm going to get in trouble probably for saying this, but it's the truth. It's my experience and it's my frustration. And I mean, it was in January that I said to my husband, let's just shut this all down. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I pushed through it, and obviously we're still open, but it lingers in my head to pull back and pull out. And it's sad
And
that
is it
I do that.
so the municipalities just shut you down, or is it like there isn't a clear path forward and they're not sort of
Well, we're
helpful?
moving forward on something now. That's about a year in now of us going back and
Okay.
forth and minor variances but I mean in terms of taking us under our wing and gratitude for what we're doing and it's part of the build, what a great growth opportunity for Ormodonte to continue to have such this business running here. No,
Hmm.
we're not that important. We're definitely not high on their list of priorities at all.
I think this is one of the things, like scoping out a little bit, not specific to your case, but one of the things that Adam and I have talked about is that rural municipalities or semi rural municipalities generally think economic development is building highways and strip malls and more houses. Like there is a template of how we have economic success,
Mhm.
which is again extractive. It's damaging. It's not really healthy for people. But
Mhm.
there is a real reluctance, maybe a lack of courage, maybe a lack of knowledge. I'm not going to attribute what it is, but when we talk about trying to get rural, semi-rural, or even almost any municipality in Simcoe County to do economic development a little bit different and be
Mhm.
thinking about those, whether it be on-farm businesses or ecotourism or ecologically based businesses like yourself, there is this like, but what are we going to get out of it? Where's the development charges coming from? And the hard part that I don't think many municipalities, not only just in Simcoe County but across Ontario, have not realized is that they have and it's not all the municipalities' fault. A lot of services have been downloaded to municipalities. They're frontline for a lot of things that they don't have the economics for. They don't have the policies to set up financial streams without the province approval. So there's a lot of things they're in a bit of a bind. But
Mhm.
the reality is the amount of responsibilities that they have versus the amount of money they would get without development charges is there's a huge gap.
Yeah.
And so they keep getting put into this what we call a Ponzi scheme of like, I just need to keep doing more of what just got me into this mess so that I can have more of a mess and whatever else. And in our municipality, I'm in Springwater, there was something called the Midhurst Secondary Plan. It was going to be 10,000 homes in a township of 20,000 people. So, you're now doubling it. It's
Mhm.
going to go and menacing wetlands. And the development did end up going through, but slightly changed. But when we finally pushed the township to do an economic feasibility study, and that was a lot of public pressure saying, what is the township going to get out of this? What are you going to end up with? They
Right.
found out that they were $30 million in the hole
Right.
after all of the houses have been built out.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're doing this at a loss.
Yeah.
Why are we sacrificing so much at a loss? And so there seems to be this really long-standing thread within our decision makings, within our institutions, and you can speak to colonialism or whatever, that is still focused on the only way to make money, especially in an area that's got farmland and rural lands and forests, is to basically kill it,
Mhm.
build over top of it, and outside of that we're not really sure what to do. Adam?
Yeah, I'm just going to point to the constrained capacity that a lot of municipalities do have when it comes to this sort of stuff. Again, and connect that to well the development style, which is really when you have a constrained capacity or limited capacity, and you have templates that you're able to deploy to make that work easier, more efficient. You don't have to come up with a custom solution for each proposal. That's the way that you get by. Unfortunately, and again, I mean, did somebody mention Japan
I did for
earlier?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that it's a great example. There's lots of other examples like in Ireland. I lived in Ireland for a bit, and they often it might be a little bit of a cliche now, but often they'll route roads around ferry circles, things like that. In Japan, I know that they also put a lot of effort into harmonizing, I guess, their construction and their development, at least, you know, not perfectly, but in certain areas with the landscape and with nature. And I'm just getting back to this contrast or tension between the sort of impersonal, inhuman style of development, and then, I mean, another interesting conversation would be what results from that in our personalities and psyches and things like that. But that tension between kind of the industrial, I guess, imposition that we place on nature versus nature itself, and how that's really all about variance and unique inherent uniqueness and things like that. And so, in terms of your business situation there, I mean, you've got a unique proposition, and the municipality doesn't seem to be able to really respond effectively to that. Instead, sort of like for them, it's probably an ideal solution would be that you would come to them with kind of a proposal that fits into something that's already pre-established in
Right.
terms of their planning, right? And then they'd be able to just kind of do a check mark against it. But instead, they've got to spend,
Right.
staff hours and time and things like that on sort of
Yeah.
fitting approvals to that unique proposal.
And it's interesting because whenever we do apply for something or, going through something, we're looking at a official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment right now. But Simcoe County will make comments, and Nottawaska Valley also makes comments. And Nottawaska Valley has been out to the site. They've been wonderful. They've seen it. They understand what we're doing. Great comments from them when they were on my property and how everything's laid out. But Simcoe County, I've asked probably two or different times, well, why don't you come out and see my property? Because I'm over the greenlands, right? And I'm like, I get what your plans are and the official plan, the Simcoe County official plan. I understand all that, but why don't you just come and see my property and see where it's located and see how it's laid out? And because I had nobody ever come on the property without leaving and saying, this is amazing. Every place should have something like this. And so they've never come, right? And so I think to myself, well, that's great if we study and we study all the official plans and we make sure that this is designated this and this is designated this. But at the end of the day, we also have to use common sense and see things as a full picture. And not everything's black and white. I know my situation is very different, and I fall into a unique. Not most people would do this, right? People wouldn't take 43 acres and spend all this money to develop and do what we've done. And so we're a little bit unique. We don't see a home occupation doing this. Um, but no one's ever come out, right? And so I think if that's your role, if your role is to protect land and really stick by all these designations, then come on out and see. And so it's just frustrating to me. That's all. So it's a lot of paperwork sometimes, and a lot of people sitting around a table talking about what should and could and what's the best for the environment. But what about what's happening live right now? In this very moment, live, this is what I'm presenting you guys. What a unique, amazing opportunity for Ormadonta to continue to support this, and Simcoe County to come up and maybe they have an idea. Maybe they have an idea that we want people to have access to the Copeland Forest, so could we take a piece of yours and make it a parking lot? Or let's just open discussion and conversation over. I get that Copeland Forest is protected, it's ANSI land and all that, and we're over the Greenlands. But we are 43 acres all around all this other beautiful forest. And we are there with our sole purpose to educate and show people how beautiful forest and trees and nature is and give them an opportunity to actually experience it who live in cities. I have people coming up from Toronto, they'll drive an hour and a half just to come and take my hot stone class or to go on the forest plank or to walk around the property with us. So um, there's just this opportunity. There's something already built in natural nature here. And so I just, I guess I feel a little hopeless for the bigger picture when I see what we've done and how much we've had to argue and push forward and get to where we're at. And yet Simcoe County's never stepped on my property.
I think that's probably a feeling that a lot of people in the environmental world writ large feel a little bit when you're coming across systems or planning rules or policies that seem to be, this is supposed to protect things. This is supposed to, our goal is to do X. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, the reality of that seems very different sometimes. Again, taking more of a wider lens. So it is, Adam and I've had experiences talking to leaders at all different political levels and
Mm-hmm.
trying to talk to them to say, if you want to make the world healthier, if you want to make your community more sustainable, if you want to save people tax money, if you want, like, there's a lot of, if you're trying to do all of these things, the behaviors you're showing, and this isn't about protectionism, but it's again going with what Adam said, if there's a template of how we do this, and we're just going to keep following it because that's a lot easier than us having to craft new. But at the
Yeah.
same time, those templates not only make it difficult to be creative and ingenious and think of things
Mm,
differently, they
right.
also don't always do what the things that they're supposed to do. So Adam did an analysis years ago about the Simcoe County Greenlands and actually how protective it isn't.
Mm,
And speaking of the Ora Moraine, and
mhm,
those of you that don't want to get into planning, you can shut your ears off for a little bit, but I'll try not to get too deep into policy. When Ora Medonte had an official plan, for those that aren't aware of what that is, it's basically all the rules and policies that dictate what you can and can't do and where you can and can't do them on a very simple level. The Ora Moraine had a lot more protection for it than it does now. It's
mhm,
actually lost a lot of protection. And so in your case, you might be frustrated with this, hullabaloo. Uh,
mhm,
but the reality is it's at more risk from large developers and aggregate than it ever was before.
mhm,
And so, there's all of these systems in place that you're trying to say, hey, let's think about an relationship where land and economy and people and health can all actually benefit from these decisions. And
mhm,
instead, it seems there's certain metrics that are prioritized,
right.
and those are the ones that benefit from the templates. Those are the ones that benefit from the decisions. And like I said, Adam and I have been talking
The bigger corporations, right? If you're a bigger corporation, then
that have the power to
mhm,
bully, to
mhm,
do whatever.
Well, I mean, there's the rationale too, which has some going for it, but some also not. Which is, I mean, and it's roughly kind of trickle down economics, right? So you support the big corporations; they provide employment and tax revenue, and through that, and income tax, et cetera, right? So, I mean, there's rationale for those big players being supported, but there's also that has resulted in a lot of the growing income inequality that we've experienced over the last few decades.
Because
Which
trickle down economics don't work.
no,
Right? Those are
and
rationale, but it doesn't mean it's evidence based or
mhm.
correct.
right, yeah, yeah, and
And
that
sometimes
gets
it's the
back to
small ones
the
too that are making a difference, right? Like the bigger corporations, I get, I understand, that of course we have to have the bigger corporations. I'm not poo-pooing them at all, but I'm just saying there has to be a rationale that looks at the community as a whole and what is the best interest for the community. And of
yeah.
course, we have to pay attention to the bigger corporations and things that they're going to be implementing. But at the same time, we have to pay attention to the people. We have to pay attention to the smaller mom and pop shops. And there's so many of us have so much to contribute to this land. And we are stifled because we're not
Hmm.
important. And
Well, and
that's,
that's
yeah.
yeah. I mean, and like you hit the nail on the head there too. With I mean, that's kind of what a municipality's job is to represent their citizens and their best interest. And I guess that's also sort of where things have been lost a little bit is that conflation with the best interests of citizens is actually the best interests of corporate profit, which hasn't panned out very well. But it does seem like there's got to be a way to facilitate and support citizens in achieving unique projects like yours, right? Without throwing the baby out with the bathwater and making other sort of large scale initiatives difficult as well. Maybe a few different templates need to be developed that can then be reverted to with unique proposals and things like that. But getting back to kind of, I think what seems to be the gist of this conversation that's developed is that there is a real value to supporting and nourishing that unique quality that we are, sort of that we are really. I mean, each one of us is a reflection of that unique quality that we see in something like a forest when we run through it. One question I had for you, and I remember a few examples. I once saw, I was running in the Don Valley, not exactly trail running. It's there's trails and stuff, but or pathway footpaths. But I remember, oh, it was in the early morning, and it was just that time of the year when mist is really kind of prevalent, right? And so mist coming off the river, and I remember seeing it was a hawk and an owl, one of the big owls, and they were fighting. It totally blew my mind. Never seen anything like that before. I'm sure you've got lots of experiences. What's the first such experience that pops to your mind in your trail running?
with animals. Um,
So just like
Like a
that
wow.
just made you stop and like all of a sudden like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here at this time and place, and it's amazing.
so for me, the forest is the most magical when it rains because no one goes into it. They think it's raining, we shouldn't be going outside. Whereas my phone will blow up from texts from people because they know that's where I'm going to be if it rains. Is in the woods, and when it's downpouring rain and you just stop, the forest is so unique in its sounds and its colors. And it's so unique because think about it. When are you in the woods when it's downpouring rain? Usually you're running back to your car. And so the next time it downpours rains, I always say when you run or hike in the woods on a rainy day, you've stolen a day because it's so magical that you can't even count it as a day, nor usually you're just stuck inside your four walls when it rains. That's where everyone goes and is inside the walls. So if any of the listeners are out there today, I challenge you that, next time it rains, doesn't matter if it's -3 outside and it's raining, if that's possible, then get out there. And I can't even explain the sounds and the sights and, the things you see. And in terms of animal life, people worry a lot about bears and all that kind of stuff. And I just laugh because a bear will take off before they'll ever see you, right? So
Mhm.
you never have to worry about that. And the coyotes too. I have dogs I run with, and the coyotes will usually when I'm done doing a long run, I'll go into the night or I'll start early morning when it's already dark. And so that's when they're out a lot. And they just look at me and off they go. Like they don't, around here anyway, right? So that's my only tidbit advice would be to the next time it rains, plan for a hike. And it's magical.
Hmm. So we're just about at the end of our time, but I've got three questions, and you're going to be the first guest that gets it, but they'll be refined through through this experience. Uh, so, what advice would you give to a young person who wants to make a difference?
Go with your heart, make a difference so that you don't have to take credit because you can do anything you want to do in life as long as you're willing not to take credit. So if you want to make a difference, make sure it comes from your heart and that maybe nobody even knew that it was you that orchestrated the whole thing. So if you really want to make a difference, then be sure that you're okay with not taking credit for it. And I guarantee you, it'll work.
Check your ego at the door.
Mhm.
Mhm,
No
mhm,
ego, amigo.
mhm.
Um, all right. So number two, and this I feel like you're gonna have some really interesting insights with your running and for this question. So how do you think about failure and how do you respond when it happens?
So the biggest thing with failure is you need to anticipate that it's going to happen. So people think failure occurs, they're terrified for failure, and when it actually happens, they're devastated. And I always say to people, okay, before you're going to start this goal, you need to anticipate failure is going to happen. And by failure happening, I mean the self doubt. I don't mean actually not being able to get it. So I always say your main goal shouldn't be to try to complete something. Your main goal should always be to give it an educated try, not just a try, but an educated try. And anticipate failure, anticipate pivoting. I don't care how smart you are or how much research you've done or how much you've trained or how much you've laid out all the different paths to do it correctly. Every single person that has an idea and that goes along this long train track to get to put that into action, there's going to be failure left, right, and center a billion different times on that journey. And anticipate it. Don't be devastated when it happens. So when I ran the entire Bruce Trail, which was 900 kilometers, I was never focused on getting to the very end. I always was just like, okay, well, I know I'm going to be tired. Ray, I know I'm going to call you and ask you after, third day of running 14 hours in a row, I'm going to be crying and say, come get me, I'm exhausted. And your answer has to be no. So I anticipated I would do that to my husband and I set him up with the answer that I needed. You tell me no, and that when I get sleep and I run the next day and I'm high on energy, call me then and come pick you up. But not at the end of the day when I know failure is going to happen at the end of the day. When I heard my numbers at the end of the day and they were only 72 instead of being 80K that day, I was just like, I'm never going to be able to accomplish this. I'm never going to get the fastest time. And I anticipated that. That's supposed to happen. So that's the biggest thing with failure is everyone's so scared of it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's going to happen. Like,
Hmm.
so anticipate. That would be my biggest advice.
Hmm. And hmm, not sure. I think I need to rephrase this a little bit. So currently it's written, what's your greatest fear for Ontario and your greatest hope? But maybe personalize that to your place
Yeah.
where you are. Yeah.
My greatest fear with the place that I have, the 43 acres and what we've built thus far, is that I'm going to burn out. I'm going to burn out. So I have this dream, and I'm 3 years in, and that's my biggest fear is I'm going to burn out. So I'm dealing with that now, trying to anticipate the next 5 years. What does the next 5 years for me and my husband look like? It can't be me working, 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, almost 365 days a year. My husband's like, you can't do this, and it's just too much. And so my hope is that I can set the business up in a way that's sustainable. And my hope is that I can continue to grow where we share the land. I'll end on this. My father recently passed in February, and the greatest lesson he taught me was what is the point of having anything, Virginia, if you don't share it? What's the point of it? It's so much more exciting and meaningful when you share. When you just keep it all to yourself, that's boring. That's mundane. That's when you get like status quo. And so when we bought this property, I knew we were going to share. I knew that was our main goal, that I wanted this land to be experienced by everyone and anyone as if it's their own. So my hope is that I can continue with this dream and set it up in a way that's financially sustainable and also physically and emotionally sustainable for me. And to do that, I need the support of the town and Simcoe County to help me set it up in a way that I can make it work.
That's great. I appreciated
Margaret.
all of your wisdom today, Virginia, and it was a really great conversation. I hope our listeners enjoyed it too. Adam, I'll let you close out.
Okay. Well, just my general closing plea for if you found this podcast interesting, this episode interesting, rate us. That helps a lot with exposure and bringing new people into the podcast fold. That would be lovely. Also, if you are interested in supporting us, sign up for our newsletter. That's kind of our main way of communicating with people. We are, I don't know, what, progressively curtailing our social media activity. Just the platforms, they're kind of toxic. They're juiced for outrage and anger and fear, and we don't like playing into that. Hence, we don't have a great social media profile. But excuses aside, sign up for our podcast. That's where you'll get our our monthly newsletter, which I really do have to finish because May's almost over. But it'll come directly to your inbox, and there's lots of great information available in that. But for now, Margaret, you look like you have one more thing you want to
I was
say.
just going to say, I think we'll put a link to Vicky Tree Yoga and Wellness in the show notes. So
Okay.
if you want to learn more about it, then and Virginia's business, then for sure. I've been
Yeah.
there. It's magical.
Okay. And for now, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Virginia. That was a great conversation. It was really nice to meet you also. Margaret's met you previously, but I've heard a lot about you from some mutual friends, and nice to finally meet you.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Nice.
So we'll see everyone back here next week. Till
Thank
then,
you.
Bye, everyone.
take care.